This is regarding our 2022 budget, and I will turn this over to our finance department for presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So this evening, I'll be sharing my screen, and Mr. Hanna will start the presentation first. Can everybody see the slide? Okay, great. Thank you. Jim, it's all yours.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. So this budget work session is to cover a couple things, and I'll start off with personnel and benefits, and then of course the finance department will pick up regarding revenues. So if we can go to the first slide.
Yep.
So here's the different things. And first up here is a slide we show you typically this time of year for your consideration for employee merit increases for the coming budget year. And what this is a 5-year look back at the not only the merit increases rewarded or awarded by Roswell, but also some of our sister cities. And what the far right column gives you, of course, is, theoretically, if 5 employees started in the same position, same salary, and 6 at these 6 cities, where would they be from July 1st, 2016 to present as far as cumulative increase, assuming same performance. So this certainly gives you an overview of that. And, I know we're also considering the compensation study, but of course merit's a separate kind of annual consideration and one that we bring to you each budget season. So I'll be happy to answer any questions about these numbers. Okay, moving on to health benefits. This gives you a breakdown of our employees who are eligible for health benefits and those that take employee-only coverage, whether it's any of our 3 plans that we offer, and then ones that take dependent coverage, and then also folks that waive coverage. And you can see that breakdown: about 41% take one of our employee-only plans, about 52% eligible employees take some type of dependent coverage, either self plus child, self plus spouse or family, and then about 7% waive coverage. And then the final row there talks about wellness plan participation, and I'll talk more about that later on. We do have 3 plans, as I mentioned, 2 high deductible plans that are accompanied with a health spending account. Those 2 plans have different deductibles, $2,000 and $4,000 for one, and then the other one has a separate deductible that's embedded. And then also a couple years ago, we added a 3rd plan. We changed one of the high deductible plans to a traditional copay plan. So that does carry a higher premium for the employees. The city's cost portion is the same regardless of which plan, or similar regardless of which plan the employee chooses. But if the employee chooses the PPO or more traditional copay plan, they pay a higher premium themselves in return for that opportunity to do a copay and a lower deductible. But overall, the cost share for the high deductible plan is about 85 to 90% city, 10 to 15% for the employee. Okay, next slide. Here is a look at how the city's self-insured health plan has performed through the eyes of our reinsurance carrier. As you know, we're self-insured, which means the city directly pays all health claims. That's certainly a cost benefit when we switched to that in 2014, although it does carry some risk, of course, because in very tough years, the city could be liable for excessive claims. So because of that, we carry reinsurance, both in the aggregate and for specific claims. And what you see in front of you is for each of the last few plan years. By the way, the 2021 is only for the first 4 months. just giving you an idea where we stand for the first 4 months of this plan year. But you can see the on the far right, the paid loss ratio. So that is based on the attachment point, which is the point at which our aggregate reinsurance would kick in and cover the city's excessive claims. It's a function of our insurance premiums is how close we come to that. And so certainly 16, 17 was a tough year, 90%. Had a couple better years, and most recently, our most complete year, 1920, we were at 83%. You generally want to keep that below 85% for renewal purposes. So we're trending a little bit better these first few months of this plan year, but we shall see. We'll anxiously see what the next quarter looks like for that. But we do monitor those claims on a regular basis to see where we can not only get the best care, but also the most cost-effective care. Next slide. Some of the challenges we've had in our most recent plan year is, as we had several large claimants, and that's what insurance is for, to cover those. And most of those are resolved at this point. We still have a couple that are remaining and carrying into this plan year. But again, those are managed very closely. Another challenge that we have that we're working to improve is the city as a whole, or the city of Roswell, has a fairly high specialty RX spend. A lot of that is related to those larger claimants. So when you get into a very tough diagnosis, a lot of times there's just one or two specific drug for the, chemotherapy, et cetera, things like that. So that does drive up our specialty claims. But we do work with a pharmacy benefit manager consultant to help us manage those costs, manage our formulary, look at alternatives for care where it can happen. Next slide. And then this graph gives you an overall trend line of what our per employee costs have been over the last, what is this now, about 7 or 8 years on this graph. You can see it has moved around, but we're pretty much following the trend of similar employees or employers. Like I said, you can see that last year, 2019-20 was tough. We were right at the average for our size employers. Looks like we're projecting to do a little bit better this year. This includes all claims, all fixed costs broken down for the city per employee per plan year. As far as the wellness program, I mentioned that we were at 67% participation, which is good and certainly improvement over the last 4 years. As a reminder to you, our wellness program is not only to keep employees healthy and engaged, but also to control costs of our benefits programs. We do annual biometric screenings. Now, this past year was anything but normal, as we all know, so we did not do the group event sort of mass biometric screening that we do in the spring. This year, we're holding on that for the spring and hoping to do it this summer if things look better as far as getting massive amounts of people under a tent or figuring out how we can do that. Either way, employees who participate in the program are required to have biometric screening either through their own doctor or provider or through a mass event. And then based on the results of those screening, those numbers, blood pressure, cholesterol, etc., they're placed into individual wellness coaching. We also have some other features of the wellness program, of course, fitness programs, reimbursements for marathons and races, and then also Smart Dollar, which is our financial wellness program, and some other events. So that concludes HR. I'd be glad to answer any questions on comp or benefits.
Council have any questions for Mr. Harner? Well, thank you, Mr. Harner. We'll circle back around to you at the end of the presentations to see if any other questions might come up or comments.
Thank you.
So I will continue with the presentation. We'll talk about the revenue section here now. And in this section, we're going to present the revenues for the general fund, some major categories. And then we'll also talk about revenues in our enterprise funds. And starting with the general fund revenues, so this particular slide, we have a chart that gives you the comparison of the current year revenues versus the proposed revenues for fiscal year 2022 for the major categories in the general fund. And you'll see the property tax, sales tax, alcohol, franchise, and business taxes, and some other categories of revenues. And you will see a breakdown of the alcohol, franchise, and business taxes and other revenues on some further slides. And as you can see, so the property tax, we are showing a slight increase in the revenue there, and as well as for the sales tax. This slide here gives you the general fund revenues, the total general fund revenues, and it is a comparison of our current year revised budget, current year estimate versus what we are proposing for fiscal year 2022. And as you can see, so the increase that you see in the estimate number here for fiscal year 2021 also includes the CARES Act money that we had received last year. So that's why that's on the higher side. Here on this particular slide, we have the 10-year history of our total property tax revenue and the millage rate. And as you can see, there has been a steady growth in revenue, and the fiscal year 2022 revenue of 31.4 million is based on the current approved millage rate of 4.955. And we have grown the residential digest by the inflation rate of 1.8 that was provided to us by Fulton County. And we have also accounted for new growth in both commercial and residential, and factored in the exemptions and appeals in our calculations here. And also to mention that these numbers include the debt service fund as well. They're not just the general fund. And here on this slide, we have the 10-year history of the millage rate. So as you can see, for the last 3 years, the millage rate has stayed constant at the 4.955 mils. And I would like to mention here that the millage rate hearings will be held separate from the budget process like we have done the past 2 years. Here we have the 10-year history of our sales tax revenue. We had a good increase in our sales tax revenue in fiscal year 2018 and 2019. But the revenues, as you can see, dropped in FY 2020 due to the COVID pandemic. However, it was not as bad as we had anticipated, and we expect to collect approximately $24.8 million in sales tax revenue in the current fiscal year. And then in FY 2022, we will see an increase in the revenue, but we will still be short of what we had received before the pandemic in fiscal year 2019. So here on this slide, we have the breakdown for the franchise, alcohol, business, and insurance taxes. And as you can see, we are showing an increase in the 3 categories except the insurance and financial institution taxes category. That's because we expect a slight drop in the insurance premium tax revenues this year. So this is your other general fund revenues category that I had shown on a previous slide. And as you can see, there are several categories within this. We have the licenses and permits. We have the intergovernmental revenues, the charges for service, which is both internal and external. We have the fines and forfeitures. We have the investment earnings, and then we have a miscellaneous category. So you'll see here that most of them, there is either a slight increase or a slight decrease. The one big difference that you see here in the intergovernmental category, you see a huge increase in the estimate number, the 4.2 million. And that's because of the CARES Act revenue that we had received. That falls into that intergovernmental category. That's why you see that huge increase and then a huge drop in fiscal year 2022 for the proposed revenue for that category. We now move on to the enterprise funds, and we'll start with the water fund here. We have some information on the current water and sewer rates for residential customers on this particular slide. And this is, so most of our residential customers fall into this first tier category, and that is what we are showing here on this particular slide. We do have other tiers, but that information has not been provided here. So, and then of course you have the number of customers for the current fiscal year in the water, the current water customers that we have. And the next slide gives you a 5-year history of our revenues, the estimates for the current fiscal year, and then the projected revenues for fiscal year 2022. And the projection for 2022 includes the current approved rate increase of 4% for this particular fund. Similarly here now for the solid waste fund, we have provided current rates that are being charged, the standard service and the premium service, and the current number of customers that we have for this particular service that we provide. And again, the history of revenues here, the estimate for fiscal year 2021, and then the projection for 2022. And again, in this particular fund too, the revenue has been grown by 3% of the current approved rate increase, which is valid until fiscal year 2024. And similarly, we have the Stormwater Fund. Again, here, the fee rate structure here is again divided into several tiers. We have 4 tiers here, and it is based on the impervious surface area on the property. And most homes in Roswell fall within the second tier, and they pay $4.15 per month for the Stormwater Fund. And then we have the number of customers. And again, for this fund, the revenues have been grown by the 2.5% approved rate increase that we have. And this is what the history, the 5-year history of the revenues, the estimate for the current fiscal year, and then the proposed revenues for fiscal year 2022 looks like. As part of our next steps in the budget process, we have a budget work session coming up on March 22nd, where we will have our partner organizations presenting their budget requests to us. And then we'll have another budget work session on March 29th at 5:30 p.m., where we will discuss capital projects. And we propose to present the proposed budget on April 26th. And on April 28th, we will have the department heads presenting their budget requests to mayor and council. And that will follow the not the budget work session, but the committee meeting that morning. And then we propose to have the first reading of the budget ordinance on May 10th, and then the second reading on May 24th. That is the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Council, have any questions? Well, I would like to thank our finance department. As usual, you've done a very good, very thorough job. We appreciate your conservative approach to budgeting, and it has always served us well. And if council has no further comments or questions, we are adjourned.
Thank you.